welcome back to the OMG MotoGP podcast. And this, OMG Extra, your extra bit on the side, your little preview ahead of the race weekend. And we're straight back into it because we're in Misano for this weekend's racing. My name is Harry Benjamin, former Grand Prix rider and British champion Keith Hewen is alongside me as always. And just a quick plea, I know I say it every time, but every like, but crucially every subscription means a lot. So in these early stages, if you watch the video and like it, do remember to click that subscribe button because it does mean a big amount. So I'll leave that there with you. Right, okay. We got a lot to get through, haven't we, in the next 15 minutes, Keith? Obviously, off the back of last weekend, Catalonia, we had some big crashes, didn't we? We don't know at the time of recording the situation on Pecco Bagnaia, but it's not been officially announced or anything whether he will be riding at all this weekend. But what are your thoughts and feelings on that?
Medical tests are Thursday afternoon. We'll find out later on Thursday afternoon. And even if they declare him fit, that means he can do a one-arm press-up or hop on one leg or whatever it might be. It seems to be one of those kind of minor things that you have to get through. But he's still got to be able to ride the bike around Misano. Tough little track, not going to be easy. So even if he's declared fit, that doesn't mean he's going to be racing come Sunday. We'll see. Everybody wants to see him there. Obviously, Ducati want to see him there and the like. We've got a few. Enea Bastianini, his teammate, isn't being replaced this weekend. There's nobody subbing for him. Although we do have Michele Pirro as a wild card on the Aruba Ducati. Danny Pedrosa is back on the KTM this weekend as well for a bit of extra interest. He's been quite interesting, having just re-signed, of course, as a test rider with KTM as well. And HRC have got Stefan Bradl out of the television commentary box and back on track as well as a wild card. So those are your changes, if you like. The number 7, Takuma Takahashi, is in for Alex Rins. Rins is still not fit. And that really is your MotoGP guys. I think the significant thing this weekend as well is we've got the track limits have been altered slightly in as much as we've had these new Misano curbs, which is a design of curb that's supposed to get increasingly bumpy and lumpy, if you like, the further off of track you get. They've had a right old ache to make this work because they put the ones they put in there were too severe at some stage, so they've had to change them out again. And significantly, track design is really important, and this is not one of the greatest tracks from a design perspective, of course. It used to go the other way round to where it goes now, so all the corners now, all the fast stuff, are decreasing speed, so you find yourself running out onto the curbs, whereas the other way around, the right way in my case, because in my day it was the other way around, you all had opening out corners, so you could go through like Crevone, which is like that scary, almost flat-out right-hander now, used to be a flat-out left-hander, that opened out so you can get on the gas and you can kind of avoid track limits a little easier the way it used to be. And significantly at Catalonia, the design of Catalonia, where we've just been, no track limits warnings. As far as I can find out, I've not seen a track limits warning across the classes that are for that.
I can't believe that. I actually can't believe that.
I know. I keep looking. I keep trying to check it through, and I'm fairly sure that I'm right. There's certainly no track limits warnings in MotoGP. So interesting stat, I suppose, if you're bored.
Yeah, well, we love a stat, don't we? Well, we're on Misano, so why don't we go into the nuts and bolts of it? It'll give us a little insider's guide.
It's a great little track. I mean, it's one of those places where you go to, it's absolutely rammed with people. The history, the names of the streets around it, the World Circuit Marco Simoncelli, as it's now called. There's a Marco Simoncelli suite where they hold press conferences and stuff like that on there. Obviously, Marco was a homegrown hero for that. There's a statue of Marco on one of the roundabouts outside. It's one of those ones in Italy where it's got that real Italian feel. Total chaos trying to get in, trying to get out. Italians trying to climb over fences, bore under fences. There's bars and tents and all the rest of it all the way down. And then you've got the hordes. It's like the marauding hordes that come over from Tuvulia, of course, which is the hometown of the empire of Valentino Rossi himself. And the yellow hordes come over the hill and they walk to the track from Tuvulia. It's like a tradition. So it's pretty spectacular. I like going to Misano. The track itself, it's a so-so track, but again, it gives you some interesting racing at the end of the day, and we'll see how that. And weather really affects this track. If it's cold, it's fast. If it's wet, if it's hot, the track gets a little bit greasier and a bit slippery, and it doesn't seem to matter what surface they lay down on it. It always seems to be that way. It's a test track for many, so quite a lot of people already, watch for Pirro. Pirro will go good here, even though he's a wild card in for Aruba. What else can I tell you about Misano? Not much, actually. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be one that's straight off the back of Catalonia, and if you could feel the tension in Spain. This back-to-back already was causing trouble for a lot of teams. It was causing a lot of trouble for IRTA, the International Race Teams Association, and other people. It's a real scrabble to get from one place to another. And you could tell there was a bit of tension, a bit of frustration in the paddock. And it's the first of our, we've got so many back-to-backs coming up. This is where you've got to dig in. This is where you've got to be digging in deep. The crash for Pecco Bagnaia has come at the wrong time. A back-to-back, and it's always going to be a case that this championship is going to be won by a man who stays injury-free pretty much because, okay, he's got a big enough lead at the moment, but that's going to be eaten into if he can't stay fit. The Aprilias are coming. You've got spoilers in there that can mess the whole thing up. If it's all very well having 8 Ducatis on the track, but if some of them aren't performing in the way they ought to be, then suddenly you can see the point situation could suddenly see, and then you can't lose sight of the fact that Pecco Bagnaia won the World Championship from a 90-point deficit.
I was literally just working out what the gap is now. Gap's only 50 now.
Yeah, exactly. So... And with sprint races in this year as well, giving you half points. This championship is nowhere near over yet. I mean, people were starting to say that Pecco had got one hand on it, and we hadn't even got to the main part of the season. Now we are. I think that. Cal was at Cal Prutzlow was definitely at Catalonia. He's testing at Aragon soon, and he's racing as a wild card in Motegi. So they're building out. People ask about wild cards. Why don't we have more wild cards? I think manufacturers are only allowed something like 3 wild cards in a year, something like that. So they can spread them out over the year. So there are restrictions on wild cards. I think they should open that out. Personally, I think you should allow more wildcards during the course of the year. It will give us a bit more spice, especially if you've got the likes of Cal Crutchlow and Danny Pedrosa, who can perform as wildcards. Stefan Bradl, I don't expect much from him, A, because of the bike, and B, because he's just not as quick as he used to be. I think Danny is. Could be interesting this weekend again.
It's always good when you see those guys back on bikes, isn't it? I want to pick up on Enea Bastianini and just sort of highlight, what a year. Only, I think it's 3 actual Grand Prix finishes so far. Was it Jorge Martin last year that was kind of similar, or the year before perhaps, where he came back from injury but then got straight off the bike again? Bastianini is big shot up in the factory team, and it's been a bit of a disaster year. Not all of it his own doing, obviously, but
it was a sought after seat, Bastianini's seat, and he's under pressure already. And to carry the kind of injuries he's got at the moment are annoying. It's the annoying injuries that are the worst, the ones that you just can't quite do your job on a motorbike. And these guys now only have to be below par by a tiny amount, and they're swamped by quick riders. And like we saw in Catalonia, something that we've been commentating about for some time on OMG. The point is now, you have got to get a lot done in that opening lap. If you've not particularly even if you've qualified on pole, you've still got to get a lot done in that opening lap, because that's where the big rush comes before you start managing your tyres a little bit. So you've got to try and get that opportunist move done early on to get yourself to the front, to make up those spaces if you haven't qualified quite as well as you should have done. What happened to Pecco still is unexplained. Would it mean that they will have been on lower tyre pressures? I was there, and I remember it was cooler on Sunday than it was scheduled to be. We had no rain. We were supposed to have 80% of rain on Saturday and 90% of rain on Sunday. So much for the weather forecasters. We had no rain at all. There was a little tiny sprinkle at one point. And the fact is, it was windy. And when you are just stood still for a little while, that wind takes heat out of tyres. Tyre pressure drops. Traction control is set for the optimum. And you end up with that situation where, turn 2, where you wouldn't expect him to he would have baffled him slightly. Big high side, fired him down the road. They'll be looking at that. It will have been because he would have definitely have had lower tyre pressures than the optimum, that is for sure. Whether that was a major cause of it, I suspect it probably was. But he did say that it felt strange on the warm-up lap. So, whether it was low tyre pressures on the warm-up lap, whether that, and he didn't give it a chance to come in But again, it emphasises the point I'm making. Everybody has got to scrap from the lights out. You've got to make that turn one work for you. And we said in this preview podcast before we got to Catalonia that turns 1 and 2 are danger spots, turn 5 being the other one when it comes to opportunistic moves. And Pecco, all on his own, without any help from anybody else, not like the other 5 that fell off on turn 1, all on his own, fired himself up the track. I don't know, it's quite funny. I read quite a lot that some very esteemed colleagues and people that I respect hugely write about this cannot continue and all the rest of it. But you go to yourself, it cannot continue. What do you propose to make a difference in this situation? We're up against it. I mean, when we say that it's going, that the Ducatis are going too fast or whatever it might be, the MotoGP is going too fast. Everybody goes, what are you going to do? You're going to slow it down. How are you going to slow it down? Are you going to slow it down to production bike level? We've talked about this before on the podcast. This is a really, it's a conundrum that I defy anybody to come up with. And it annoys me when journalists particularly say this cannot continue, it's unsafe and all the rest of it. It is what it is, and we're all racing in the same circumstances, and that's got to be managed. I mean, this tyre pressure thing, I struggle with how they can't come up with a system that keeps the tyre pressure constant. There are pressurized systems around the world for different engineering, circumstances that it just seems to me to be a problem, but for someone clever, not a problem. Pressurized hubs or something. Somebody wrote to us actually on OMG, our podcast, if you looked out the line somewhere, and said, why don't we have pressurized tanks in the hub, for instance, where it takes up the pressure if it overpressures and it puts it back in if they drop to a certain extent. There has got to be some system that we're talking about. The measurement system at the moment is fine. They've got that right now, and they can check that through the data consistently across all manufacturers, which is good. But what they haven't got rid of is the inconsistency of tyre pressure within the motorbikes, within the rules. That's got to be the next big step, I would have said.
Oh, I need Danny Aldridge back on, don't we?
No, he wouldn't want to talk about it.
No, that's true.
And he said he's the policeman.
Yeah.
He's not the man to come up with the idea particularly.
Very true, very true. Well, I mean, talking of sort of changes and trialling and testing, there was Moto2 and Moto3 obviously back in action as well. There was some quite significant testing going on after Catalonia. Well,
Pirelli are the tyre for the spec tyre for next year, starting next year. Pirelli are into Moto3 and Moto2 as a supplier. Really exciting, actually, that is, because Pirelli are a completely different type of construction to the Dunlop. Dunlop is stiffer, Pirelli is naturally a bit softer. And they're not making, I would suspect they're not making special tyres for Moto2 and Moto3. There'll be a tyre that a construction they already have that they're modifying for the two classes. Now, rumour has it, and this was a closed test session on Monday and Tuesday, closed test session, no journalists, no stopwatches, no official releases to let you know. But of course, we found out that the Pirellis were faster than the Dunlops at that point. But of course, what you don't know, and Pirelli would have slung soft tyres at it and so on and so forth to make them faster, because you don't want to be coming into a test and then it leaked out that they were miles slower than the preceding Dunlops. So they were fast. Interesting, I think it was Rory Skinner who said that the feel was familiar to him, because they're more of a super sport tyre, a super bike tyre than a Grand Prix tyre. There's a subtle difference between the two.
Could it bring a big
Grand Prix bikes
performance?
tend to be a lot stiffer, a lot sharper in the way that they feel to a modified road bike, chassis wise, and so therefore tyre wise, you've got a different conundrum to work your way around. So the Pirelli will be of a softer construction and sidewalls and so on. And I suspect that might give a bit more feel from past personal knowledge.
Well,
long time ago, that is.
For the likes of long time ago. For the likes of Rory Skinner, though, it could be a massive advantage suddenly if it's a bit more familiar. Could it see a swing of competitiveness?
I don't think so. I mean, 5 minutes and they'll all be down to it. I mean, these guys are the top of the game, and you know what it's like, whether it's 4 wheels or 2 wheels, Harry. Cream rises to the top. They get the data within the first few rounds, and before you know where they are, they've got it all worked out. And I think that will be the case with Pirelli next year. But it is exciting. It is a development, and it might add to both Moto3 and Moto2 classes. But how can you make it much better than they already are? I mean, we're already getting cracking races everywhere.
Yeah.
It might suit, you say Rory Skinner, well, it might suit the likes of an ex-Superbike, British Superbike rider, Jake Dixon. But hopefully by then he'll have gone to MotoGP.
Yeah. You should. There's a great chat on Jake as well in our previous episode with Charlie Hiscott, who informed us as well. They're doing a behind the scenes documentary about him this year. So do have a little check out of that podcast as well. All right then, we're already towards the end as always. So what are we expecting then? Predictions for this weekend? Are the Aprilias coming? Are they going to carry that pace forward again?
I don't see why not. I think that Aleix at the moment is riding, El Capitan is at the top of his game at the minute. And I think he's a distinct believer now. I think, and everyone else is looking in, Maverick Vinales is back where he ought to be. It was great fun to see him, battling it out at the end of the day. But I think Aleix Espargaro is slowly but surely establishing himself as a proper front runner. And to do the double, sprint race and main Grand Prix in Catalonia. His home race, by the way, he lives at, he's from down the road. So at the end of the day, to take that double there, what do they say about win or choke? They're the riders. Sometimes you home round, you choke rather than win. You see more of that than you do of what we saw from Aleix at the weekend. So, and his two kids joining him up on the podium was just something a little bit special.
I love the fact on his helmet. I think he had written one more lap as well, which which was brilliant.
He wasn't going to get it wrong this year, was he?
No. All right then. So, what's your sprint? 1, 2, 3. What are we going for?
Okay, I'm going to go in with Aleix, Jorge Martin, Binder.
Oh, I always forget about Binder. Okay, yeah. I've gone for Jorge Martin, Bezzecchi. Wait, is he back in? Yeah, he isn't. Aleix. Third.
Okay, Grand Prix. Go on, you go.
I'll go first. I've gone for a Jorge Martin clean sweep this weekend. I think this is when he's going to get a sniff and start turning things around, especially if Pecco can't take part. Aleix second, Vinales third.
Okay, I'm going to go Jorge Martin, the same as you.
Okay.
I think that this is his time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have Luca Marini as third.
Okay.
I'm going to have Marini third, Vinales second.
Oh, okay. Well, Vinales on the podium here last year as well. Let's not forget. So, okay. All right. Let us know your 1, 2, 3s. Always like having a little look at them in the comments. Great to see the variety that comes up. But that's the beauty, isn't it, in MotoGP? You actually can't quite call it. And especially this weekend, we really don't know. Things are still up in the air. Final thoughts, Keith?
Looking forward to it. Hope it doesn't rain. I haven't checked the weather forecast because it was a complete waste of time when I looked at it for Catalonia. So I'm making no predictions at all for the weather. Who cares if it's wet or dry from a spectator's point of view, because it's great fun. Either way, prefer it to be dry though. As an ex-rider, you always prefer it to be dry.
Yeah, definitely. Well, look, we're looking forward to this weekend. Hope you are as well. Do make sure you stay liked and subscribed and all of that jazz. And get your questions in for Tuesday's show, where we'll be joined by another special guest and looking back at the weekend's action alongside myself and Keith. But until then, you can email us as well, omgmotogp@gmail.com, all social media. We'll get it all, YouTube comments, we see it all. Thank you very much, Mr. Hewen, and we shall see you next time. Enjoy the weekend.